Are you ready for the word?
Yes.
Turn to Genesis 12. You can also turn to Matthew 13 if you want to. We'll start there actually. But we're going to focus and spend most of our time in Genesis 12 and 13. Many years ago we did a study of the 7 parables found in Matthew 13. One of those parables is found in verses 45 and 46 of Matthew 13. And it says this, "Again, the kingdom of heaven is likened to a merchant man seeking goodly pearls, who when he had found one pearl of great price, went and sold all that he had and bought it." And the church for hundreds of years has taught that this parable means that the Messiah is the pearl of great price, or that the kingdom is the pearl of great price, and that we ought to sell everything that we have to get it, that it is more valuable than everything else. However, that interpretation of the parable is far too simplistic to be accurate. And it doesn't mesh with the other parables that are told around it. The context would tell us that that is not the correct interpretation. Yeshua had said to the disciples earlier on that the reason he spoke in parables was twofold. Do you remember what the two reasons was he'd speak in parables? Sometimes, or all the time I guess, when he spoke in a parable, he said that it was to conceal information. But at the same time he was concealing information, he was revealing information. He said, "I speak in parables because it's given for you to know, but it's not given for them to know. You will know the meaning of the parable, they'll never know the meaning of the parable." So, to those it conceals truth from, they read this parable and immediately think they know what it means. They think it means that the Messiah is the pearl of great price, or that the kingdom is the pearl of great price. But if you look at the other parables he told that day, and you listen to what he said in this one parable, if you pay attention to what he said, if you having ears to hear can hear and having eyes to see can see, you'll see that there was a deeper truth that he was revealing. So listen to what he said. He said, "The kingdom of heaven is like this." It's like a merchant man. So we have a merchant man in the parable. A merchant man is one who seeks out and purchases merchandise that he can buy wholesale and sell retail. He goes in search of merchandise that he can purchase and at a set price, but he knows that he can take it to another location and sell it for more money. That's what a merchant man does, okay? This particular merchant man specialized in what product?
Pearls.
Goodly pearls. That was his field of expertise. That was his field of interest. That's what he was interested in. So every day he'd get up and go in search of goodly pearls. But the parable said he found one pearl. His merchandise was goodly pearls, but he found one pearl. Pay attention to that. Singular. He went from plural to singular. And this one pearl he found was of great price or of great value. What did he do next?
Went and sold all that he had.
He sold everything he had and bought it. Bought it. And you know what that did? That put him out of business. He's a merchant man. What do merchant men do? They go in search of merchandise to buy it that they can turn a profit. He sold everything he had and paid retail for a pearl of great price. Now he does not have the capital that he needs to stay in business. He no longer leaves home and devotes himself and his energies to finding other goodly pearls. Now, I'm not going to go through all those other parables this morning. that help us to understand that point and help me to prove my point. But a thorough study of those parables helps us understand that Yeshua is not bragging on this man, nor is he commending this man. This man made a mistake. He's actually criticizing him. This man was supposed to be in search of goodly pearls. He got sidetracked and no longer was doing that. And he says it's just like that in the kingdom of heaven. That is, you and I are supposed to spend our lives in search of goodly pearls. These goodly pearls are found in the kingdom of heaven, or they're found in Torah. And we are supposed to devote ourselves to finding these goodly pearls. But sometimes people find one pearl that they really love and they get fixated on.
True.
And they sell all they have and go all in on that one pearl of great price. It's an amazing pearl. Nobody would deny that it's an amazing pearl. But we're never supposed to abandon all the other pearls for any one pearl.
Right.
Why are there so many denominations? And the answer is simple. It's because all throughout history, certain groups have found pearls of great price in the Scripture. And they got fixated on that pearl, that one pearl they found, and they abandoned all other pearls and built monuments around that one pearl. They became a museum for that one pearl. Are you with me? Now, it's easy to see that when you look at all the denominations and see how they have held on to one pearl of truth, but are so spiritually bankrupt they cannot purchase for themselves other goodly pearls. I bring that up because at the time that we went over that, and this has been many years ago, it was easy to see that the groups we had once associated ourselves with had done this. Healing had become a pearl of great price, that people begin to abandon all other pearls around that one great pearl. It's a great pearl.
Yeah.
But they abandoned all other pearls, and their teachings got squirrely because they didn't know anything about the other goodly pearls that were supposed to balance out our lives around that one great pearl, right? Salvation by grace through faith is a pearl of great price. But you cannot build a denomination around that at the expense of all the other goodly pearls found in Scripture. The power of confession. The power that the tongue has. Life and death are in the power of the tongue. That's a pearl of great price. But if you get so fixated on it that you ignore the other goodly pearls, you're going to find yourself in trouble real quick. Well, it's easy to see how different groups had done that. What's not so easy to see is how all groups are in danger of doing that. That's why Yeshua is telling the parable and warning us to never stop being merchants who go out daily in search of goodly pearls. Because even though it is extremely true that the Sabbath is a pearl of great price, it's not the only pearl in there.
That's right.
Amen.
Even though it's true that the Moedim are as a group a pearl of great price, they're not the only pearl.
That's right.
And even though discovering that our Elohim has a holy name is a pearl of great price, there's other great pearls in there. Okay? And even though knowledge of the Nephilim, how that's opened so many things in Scripture to us by finding that one pearl of great price, it's not the only pearl in there. We're not to be so fixated on any one of these things or a combination of them that we ignore other goodly pearls. Some in Torah movement or Hebrew roots movement get agitated if you dare to stand up and speak and you're not talking about the Sabbath, the Moedim, or the name. That's the pearl of great price to them, one of them or a combination of them. And if you stand up on the Sabbath and talk, you ought to be talking about one of those three. But this morning I want to tell you there are other goodly pearls. And one such pearl is found in Genesis 12. Actually, there are several goodly pearls there. And we talked about a couple of them last week. But this morning I want to talk about one that I think we have become conditioned to overlook. We read it and never see it. We hear it and it never registers. We're conditioned not to see this goodly pearl. It's there and we don't see it. And my question this morning is, could it possibly be because we don't want to see it? And we don't talk about it, perhaps because we don't want to talk about it, and perhaps because we don't even want to hear other people talk about it. Well, this morning we're going to talk about it. Genesis 12. We're going to read the entire text again, but we're going to focus on particularly two verses. But we're going to begin reading in verse 10. And there was a famine in the land, and Abram went down into Egypt to sojourn there, for the famine was grievous in the land. And it came to pass, when he was come near to enter into Egypt, that he said unto Sarai his wife, Behold now, I know that you are a fair woman to look upon. Therefore it shall come to pass, when the Egyptians shall see you, that they shall say, This is his wife, and they will kill me, but they will save you alive. Was he being paranoid? Was his concern real?
Yeah.
Very real. The earth was filled with wickedness that even in the day that you and I live in, we cannot comprehend how wicked it was. Our land is wicked, and yet we have laws that govern our land that are based on biblical principles. You know what that means? Is when our country was founded and throughout the years, they went to Torah to find out how a land and a people should be governed, and laws were put in place based on biblical principles. We call it Judeo-Christian principles, but the truth is it is biblical Torah principles. Well, even though we're founded on that, look at how those laws are hated, despised, and rejected, and how wicked men can get even with Torah-based laws on the books. Now imagine a land where there is no covenant people and there is no book of the covenant. Imagine trying to govern people in a day and time when there was no Torah to look to point to say, hey, this is how our Creator wants us to live. There was no covenant people. There was no book of the covenant. Every man did that which was right in his own eyes. Wickedness filled the earth. We saw in Genesis 6 that a flood, it got so wicked in Genesis 6 that a flood wiped everybody off the face of the earth except for 8 people. And those 8 people repopulated the earth, and wickedness rapidly filled the earth once again, culminating in Babylon and Nimrod and the Tower of Babel. Men began to worship demons as God and to build idols and temples to them, and did abominable things in the earth. Their lack of restraint was real. And Abraham was correct. They would have killed him just to take his wife away and saw nothing wrong with it. So he has to... He comes up with a plan. Verse 13. Say, I pray you, you are my sister, that it may be well with me for your sake, and my soul shall live because of you. We saw last week that this was ended up being a Yahweh idea. Yahweh used it to create a beautiful pattern to show how his people would be taken captive by Pharaoh. but by use of plagues he'd deliver them and bring them out with great wealth. This brings me to the next verses. Now, listen carefully. Verse 14. It came to pass that when Abram was coming to Egypt, the Egyptians did just what he said they'd do. They beheld the woman, that she was very fair. The princes also of Pharaoh saw her and commended her before Pharaoh, and the woman was taken into Pharaoh's house. And he entreated Abram well for her sake, and he had sheep and oxen, and he asses, and men servants, and maid servants, and she asses, and camels. We'll talk about that verse in a minute, but here's what I want you to pay attention to. First of all, verse 16, Abram was rich. Abram was very rich. Verse 17, Yahweh plagued Pharaoh and his house with great plagues because of Sarah, Abram's wife. And Pharaoh called Abram and said, what is this that you have done unto me? Why did you not tell me that she was your wife? Why did you say, she is my sister, so I might have taken her to me to wife? Now therefore, behold your wife, take her and go your way. And Pharaoh commanded his men concerning him, and they sent him away, and his wife, and all that he had. So when Abram came to Egypt, he came in wealthy, and when he left Egypt, he left wealthy. We read this last week, and yet I missed it, so it's possible you did too. Let's read verse 16 again. And he, Pharaoh, entreated Abram well for her sake, and he had sheep and oxen, and he asses and men servants and maid servants, and she asses and camels. Does verse 16 say Pharaoh gave him all that?
No.
Does not, does it? Being conditioned to see something that's not really there is a dangerous thing. And I had been conditioned to read that to say Pharaoh gave him a bunch of wealth for his sister. It's not what it says. It says he entreated Abram well for her sake. You know what that means? He didn't kill Abram, and he didn't take away Abram's stuff. He's wicked. Wicked, wicked man. Normally, what he would have done with a man of Abram's status is when that man came in, he'd have killed him, took his stuff, and took his woman. Verse 16 is not telling us that Pharaoh made Abram rich. Verse 16 is just telling us Abram was rich. You remember what Abram told the king of Sodom? Genesis 14 verse 22, Abram said to the king of Sodom, I have lifted up my hand unto Yahweh, the Most High, the possessor of heaven and earth, that I will not take from you a thread even to a shoe latchet, and that I will not take anything that is yours, lest you should say, I have made Abram rich. Abram was opposed greatly to having to say, that man gave me all my wealth. He wouldn't let the king of Sodom do it, and he certainly wouldn't have allowed Pharaoh to do it. Make no mistake about it, however, verse 16 is telling us he was very rich. Look in chapter 13 for just a moment. And Abram, verse 2, was very rich. Well, yeah, spiritually speaking, he was. Well, read it. How was he very rich? In cattle. What else?
Silver.
Silver and in gold. I've got one bull, little bitty thing. I'm not very rich in cattle. I got chickens. I'm not very rich in chickens. Okay. When it says Abram was very rich in cattle, it means he had a bunch. But he not only had cattle, he had silver and he had gold. This is valuable to me, but it doesn't constitute me being very rich in gold. He was very rich in gold. Then look in chapter 13, verse 6. And the land was not able to bear them, that they might dwell together, for their substance was great, so that they could not dwell together. This is Abram and Lot. Their substance was so great, they could not dwell together. Now, Brian, Dave Gates, and I and our families lived together on several acres on that mountain. What if we had so much stuff that Nat Mountain couldn't sustain us? There's a lot of pasture land on Nat Mountain. A lot of pasture land. What if we were so rich that we had to talk about splitting up because there was not enough pasture land up there for all of our cattle? I'm trying to get us to grasp what the Bible's telling us. When there is a region that is not big enough for your stuff, you got a bunch of stuff. I don't want to call it stuff either because I don't want us to think of hoarders. Possessions. Okay? This is a goodly pearl and we need to pay attention to it. Abram was very rich. Now understand that he's very rich despite the fact he grew up in a home where his dad had sold himself to idolatry. He grew up in a home that was one of paganism and the worship of false gods. Despite the fact that he grew up in Ur the Chaldees, which was a land that was devoted to worshiping demon spirits and rejecting anything and everything that had anything to do with Yahweh, despite the fact that he grew up in a region that was devoted to rejecting Yahweh and worshiping demon spirits, despite the fact that he grew up in that environment, he was very rich. Despite the fact that he had to leave Ur of Chaldees and become a pilgrim in a land that he didn't know anything about. When he got to that land, he was very rich. I think that we have been conditioned to believe, if it's not true of you, then I'm not talking about you, but I think we have been conditioned to believe that if we keep Torah, it means we're giving up on any thought of being rich. I think we've been conditioned to look for and expect rejection, persecution, and unfairness. I think that we have been conditioned to believe that if we keep Torah, we just need to resign ourselves to the fact that we'll ever be able to do more than barely get by in the earth. I think we've been conditioned to believe that if we're going to keep Torah, what we better do is buy ourselves a homestead in the middle of nowhere, get off the grid, pile up as much survival gear as we possibly can, and learn how to live off the land. That's the best that we could possibly hope for. Even now, as I say what I just said, I know those words have angered some because they sincerely believe that that is supposed to be the way we're supposed to be. And therefore I sound as if I'm speaking against truth. But let me remind you of what Yahweh has been reminding me of the last 2 weeks. Abram lived in the more wicked times than you and I are living in, and he was very rich. And Abram lived in the days of Nimrod. Nimrod ruled the land. Joe Biden cannot even compare in wickedness. He and his cronies cannot even compare in wickedness to Nimrod. Abram lived in the days of the Tower of Babel, and the world has never seen catastrophic earthquakes and earth-shaking events like it did in those days. Our tsunamis and natural disasters don't even compare with the splitting of the continents that took place in the days of the Tower of Babel. Abram lived in the days of the rise of the Babylonian idolatry, whose agenda was a one-world government with a one-world religion. Our politicians' attempts at this are horrific, I admit, but yet they are weak in comparison to the efforts that Abraham witnessed to do the same thing. And yet, Abraham did not live like a hermit in a lean-to on the backside of some wilderness. Abram was very rich. And just so you and I wouldn't spiritualize it and try to make out like it meant rich spiritually, again it says he was very rich in cattle, very rich in silver, and very rich in gold. And we've been conditioned to read that like it's nothing. We've been conditioned to read it and not see it. We've been conditioned to read that and ignore it so that we don't for 1 second start thinking that maybe we're also supposed to have more than what we have. So, you got your notebook? Write this in your notebook. July 31st, 2021. This is the day my life changed for good. This is the day my life changed for good. Now, for good has a double meaning. To say it changed for good could say it means forever. It changed for good. It changed forever. It'll never go back to the way it was. From this day forward, I'll never be like I am now or like I used to be. But for good also can mean my life changed and every change was good. It changed for good. Now write this. Just a question I want us to ponder. Is it possible not saying is it true, I just want to know, is it possible that I am living my life at a standard that is less than what is possible? Let me say it again. Is it possible that I am living my life at a standard that is less than what is possible? And if it is possible, you don't have to write this down. I just want you to put that question there because I want you to ponder it in the next several days. Because if our life is going to change for good forever from this day forward, we're going to have to ponder questions like this. But if it is possible that I'm living my life at a standard that's less than what is possible, then the next logical question is this: why? Why am I living that way? Is it because the world is so wicked there's no way for me to possibly prosper? Is it because Yahweh wants me to live at this standard that I'm living at? Is it because there's no way to keep Torah and prosper in a wicked environment where wicked men have so much control? Or is it because I've been conditioned to never expect more than what I have? Turn to Deuteronomy 28. Verse 1. It shall come to pass, if you shall hearken diligently unto the voice of Yahweh your Elohim, to observe and to do all His commandments which I command you this day, that Yahweh your Elohim will see to it that you barely get by for the rest of your life. Not what it says, is it? If you observe to do all His commandments which I command you this day, Yahweh your Elohim will set you on high above all nations of the earth. And all these blessings shall come on you and overtake you. If, everybody say if. This is going to be the second time it said this. It said it in verse 1, it's going to say it again. If you will hearken unto the voice of Yahweh your Elohim. We have been taught to obey, but we have not been taught to hearken. There's a difference between obeying and hearkening. Obedience puts us in a position to be blessed. Hearkening gives us the tools for the blessing. Listen to that. Obedience puts us in a position for the blessing, but hearkening gives us the tools or the actions that we need that will bring the blessing. Listen to verse 3. Blessed shall you be in the city, blessed shall you be in the field. So if you want to live here or there, if you go here, you go there, you're going to be blessed. Verse 4, blessed shall be the fruit of your body, and the fruit of your ground, and the fruit of your cattle, the increase of your kind, and the flocks of your sheep. Well, I'm going to have a body to be blessed. I'm going to have ground to put the fruit trees in to be blessed. I'm going to have ground to have cattle, to be able to feed the cattle that I have to be blessed. I'm going to have land to feed the sheep. I'm going to be blessed. But if I have all that, Yahweh will see to it that those things are blessed, so that my body, my cattle, my kind, my sheep, my ground is all blessed. Blessed shall be your basket and your store. You're going to have more than enough. You're going to have what you need, and you're going to have some that you can put back. Blessed shall you be when you come in, and blessed shall you be when you go out. Those are battle terms. When you have to do battle, you'll be blessed when you go out to do it, and you'll be blessed when you come back. Verse 7. Yahweh shall cause your enemies that rise up against you to be smitten before your face. They shall come out against you one way and flee before you 7 ways. He didn't say, if you hearken to me and obey my voice, I'll see to it you don't have any enemies. He said, I'll just see to it that you overcome them. Verse 8. Yahweh shall command the blessing upon you in your storehouses and in all that you set your hand unto, and He shall bless you in the land which Yahweh your Elohim shall give you. Yahweh shall establish you a holy people unto Himself, as He has sworn unto you, if you shall keep the commandments of Yahweh your Elohim and walk in His ways. And all the people of the earth shall see that you are called by the name of Yahweh. They'll be afraid of you. Instead of you fearing them, they will fear you. And Yahweh shall make you plenteous. Everybody say plenteous.
Plenteous.
Yahweh shall see to it that you have plenty in goods, in the fruit of your body, in the fruit of your cattle, and fruit of the ground, in the land which Yahweh sware unto your fathers to give you. Yahweh shall open unto you His good treasure, the heaven, to give the rain unto the land in its season, and to bless all the work of your hand. And you shall lend unto many nations, and you shall not borrow. And Yahweh shall make you the head and not the tail. You shall be above only, and you shall not be beneath. If you hearken, there's that word again, unto the commandments of Yahweh your Elohim, which I command you this day to observe and to do them, and you shall not go aside from any of the words which I command you this day, to the right hand or to the left, to go after other Elohims to serve them. So we know that we're to break free of paganism. We know that we're to keep Torah. But what we have failed to see is that Yahweh's promising blessings to us if we do. So my question to you this morning is, as we read Deuteronomy 28, is it true or not? Do we only focus on the parts of Torah that tell us to keep the Sabbath and know the name and keep the Moedim, and the parts of Torah that tell us not to eat pig? The same Torah that gives us Leviticus 23 that we say, yes, that's right. The same Torah that gives us Leviticus 23 gives us Deuteronomy 28. Do we say, yes, that's right, and lock on to it? Or do we read it and say, times are too wicked for that to be so? Do we read Deuteronomy 28 and let it reshape the way we think? Now that's where I want us to focus this morning. You know, when I first heard what Torah had to say about bacon and shrimp, I had to let Torah reshape the way I think. Because I had been conditioned to think those things were delicious, and if they were delicious, they couldn't be bad. It's true. Hard to admit now, hard to believe I thought that way, but that's the way I thought. They're delicious, and if they're delicious, they got to be good. Good for me. Torah had to reshape my thinking. So now the thought of even putting that in my mouth is disgusting and detestable. When I first heard what Torah had to say about the Sabbath, I had to allow Torah to reshape how I thought, because I was certain that the first day of the week was the holy day. Torah had to change the way I thought about that. So do we ignore Torah now in Deuteronomy 28? Or do we admit that we might have some chains of bondage that we have not yet shaken free from? Do we dare admit that perhaps we have not gone to greater levels of possessions because we have not been conditioned, because we have been conditioned to not believe everything that Torah says? Here it is, Deuteronomy 28, telling us that Yahweh is promising to bless us if we'll hearken to Him. Written in the same Torah that told us about the Sabbath, about the name, about the clean, about the unclean, and about the Moedim. Could it possibly be another truth that we've been brainwashed into not believing? Perhaps it's easier to believe the lie than it is to believe the truth. The lie being this: we're not supposed to prosper. And that lie is easier to believe because it consoles us and helps us believe that we're not prospering because it's not Yahweh's will, and because the earth is filled with wicked people, and these wicked people and wicked things keep us down. The lie is easier to believe because if the truth is Yahweh wants to bless us, then verse 1 of Deuteronomy 28 is telling us the real reason we're not blessed. And the real reason is not that Yahweh doesn't want us blessed. The real reason is not because our environment is wicked. The real reason is because we're not hearkening diligently to His voice. He said, if we will hearken and observe to do. So in our obedience, we are also supposed to be listening for other instruction that will bring the blessing. Obedience to what is written is just a starting point. Now that you are obedient to that, Yahweh says, hearken diligently to me, and I'll cause you to walk in the blessing. It goes back to Isaiah 1:19. We brought this up last week. Isaiah 1:19 does not say, if you are obedient, you shall eat the good of the land. Don't you wish it did? Isaiah 1:19 does not say, if you are obedient, you shall eat the good of the land. What does it say? If you are willing and obedient. Willing, Strong says that the word willing means acquiescence. I have trouble with that word, acquiescence. That's what he said the word means, acquiescence. I had to look that word up. Here's what acquiescence means. Ready to accept something without protesting. Or ready to do what somebody else wants. So Yahweh says, I want to give you the good of the land. What comes out of the land? Everything. Yahweh says, I want to give you the good of the land. And yes, I need you to obey, but that's not all. You have to be ready to accept the blessing without protest. Without your mind thinking and saying, well, I'm not supposed to be blessed. You have to be ready to do what I tell you to do when I tell you to do it so that I can get the blessing to you. Let me give you an example here. Jacob had to run for his life. His dad did not want him to have the blessing of the birthright. You remember?
Yeah.
It was his. Yahweh had promised it before he was born. And he had made a deal with his brother, didn't con him, made a legitimate deal where he purchased that birthright. Those two things didn't matter. His dad didn't want him to have it, and his brother wanted to kill him so he couldn't have it, so he had to run for his life. He runs and ends up staying with his uncle Laban. Imagine the worst uncle on the planet of the earth, and you got a vision of Laban. Laban was a liar, and he was a con. He worked for that man for 7 years so he could marry Rachel, but Laban stuck him with her sister Leah. He ends up working another 7 years so that he can marry and have Rachel legally. Laban intended to keep Jacob broke and enslaved his whole life. But Jacob was willing and obedient to Yahweh. Yahweh told him what to do, and no matter how ridiculous it sounded, he did it, and it made him wealthy. Go read Genesis 30. And start in verse 26 and read. I don't mean necessarily now, but make yourself a note. Genesis 30, and in verse 26 and following, go read that passage. Jacob goes to Laban after almost 20 years of service. He realizes he's getting nowhere and he's got nothing to show for all of the labor that he's given this man. And he goes to Laban and says, give me my wives and my children that I might leave. Laban understands how valuable Jacob is. And he said, no, I'm not going to do that. I want you to stay. Name your wage. What would it take to keep you? Jacob said, sir, I want nothing that is yours. I'm not here to take anything from you. I've been taking care of your sheep, so I tell you what. Let's go through them today, and every ring-straked, every speckled, every spotted sheep that's in the flock, take them out. Those are yours, not mine. Take them out. I'll continue to take care of your sheep. But every time from this day forward that one is born and he's speckled or spotted or ring-shanked, that would be my wage. Those would become mine. And Laban said, that's a deal. And they took all of those spotted and speckled and ring-shanked out of the flock and took them a long way away. The man that is a con doesn't trust anybody. Understand? He got them a long way away so they weren't being snuck back in for breeding purposes. Well, Jacob took limbs off poplar trees and hazelnut trees and some other tree, and he would peel bark off in little strips so that the white in that limb would show. And he stuck it in front of the watering troughs or the watering holes. And when those sheep would come drink, and then they would bear lambs, the lambs were spotted, speckled, and ring-shanked. He just kept getting wealthier and wealthier and wealthier. Well, the question is, where did that idea come from? He didn't get wealthy by keeping Torah. He put himself in a position to become wealthy by keeping Torah. But he became wealthy because of this idea of putting things in front of the watering trough. Did he get it out of the Farmer's Almanac? Did he get it from the 4-H Club? Did he get it from Future Farmers of America? Where did he get this brilliant idea? He got it from Yahweh. He said, let's just go read that. Genesis 31. When he is telling Rachel and Leah that it's time to go. And you know why it was time to go? He had become so wealthy that Laban's children wanted to annihilate him, kill him, because their dad was becoming less and less rich, and Jacob was becoming richer and richer, and they felt like, that's our dad's stuff, it doesn't belong to him. And so they were going to kill him. You know, you get rich, people are going to hate you. Y'all don't like me using that word. That's okay. It's true. You get rich, people are going to hate you, and he sensed the hatred. And so listen to what he said to his wives in verse 7. Your father has deceived me and changed my wages 10 times, but Yahweh suffered him not to hurt me. Remember that deal that Laban and Jacob made? Laban didn't stick to the deal. When Laban saw how wealthy he was becoming, Laban said, no, you don't get the spotted, the speckled, and the ring-shanked. That's not fair. You're getting too many. You can just get the speckled. That's all you get, speckled. And Jacob said, well, every time he'd make that deal, I'd say, okay, deal. From that time on, everything was born was speckled. And Laban would come and say, no, we can't have that. I meant to say, the speckled are mine, you get the spotted. Well, from that day forward, everything that was born was spotted. He said he changed the deal 10 times. No matter how he changed it, Yahweh wouldn't let him hurt me. Lock in on that. Verse 8, this is what I just said. If he said thus, the speckled shall be your wages, then all the cattle bear speckled. And if he said this, the ring-straked shall be your hire, then bear all the cattle ring-straked. Thus Yahweh has taken away the cattle of your father and given them to me. I didn't take a thing from him. But Yahweh saw his wickedness and my righteousness, and because I did what Yahweh said do, he took away your father's wealth and he gave it to me. Verse 10. And it came to pass at the time that the cattle conceived that I lifted up my eyes and I saw in a dream. And behold, the rams which leaped upon the cattle were ring-straked, speckled, and gristled. And the angel of Yahweh spoke unto me in a dream, saying, Jacob. And I said, Here am I. And he said, Lift up now your eyes and see all the rams which leap upon the cattle are ring-straked, speckled, and gristled, for I have seen all that Laban does unto you. Don't you see? What he just said is that the idea that I had that caused me to make the deal with your dad that I made was because of a dream that Yahweh gave me. A messenger of Yahweh gave me this idea while I was asleep. Don't we now see that the whole world can be against you and working to keep you poor, but if you're willing, ready to accept the blessing without protest, Yahweh said, I'll give you the good of the land. So think about this dream that Jacob had. And ask yourself this, would we have even paid attention to the dream? Or would we have got up the next morning and said to our wife, golly, that was the strangest dream. You won't believe what a dream. That was weird. And then go off about our daily routine. That's where our danger is. We get so locked into our daily routine. We go about our daily routine. I'll never be rich. He's crooked. He's a liar. He's going to keep me down the rest of my life. I'll never be able to have anything. Would we have gone through our day like that? Or would we have thought, Yahweh just told me what to do? Yeah. Would we be willing to have the courage to make the deal that he made? Sir, I've worked 20 years and yet to this day, I'm going to say even after 20 years or 14 years of serving you, I don't want anything in there. It's all yours. I just took care of it. But from this day forward, here's what I want. Would we have had the courage to make that deal and believe that it would have worked out for us? Or would we have been content to work for $18.50 an hour? I just tell you, Laban, if you could just see fit to pay me X. So you have a sure thing, pay me X, or you have the idea from Yahweh that says, I'll just take the speckled, the spotted, and the ring straight. That took courage. We need to understand that the place of wealth is not in what we're making by the hour. The place of wealth is going to come when we learn to hear from Yahweh and hearken diligently to His voice. So let's read on. Look in chapter 30, verse 43. Verse 43, and the man increased exceedingly and had much cattle and maid servants and men servants and camels and asses. It's talking about great wealth. So, do we dare to say this? Do we dare to say, if it's not the world's fault that I'm where I am, and it's not Yahweh's fault that I am where I am, then it has to be that I've been conditioned to believe that I'm not supposed to be blessed with great possessions. Brian and I stood in our kitchen Wednesday night and dared to probe the reality of these questions and the reality of our condition, and we dared to ask these hard questions back and forth to one another, and we dared to question whether we had truly believed what Torah says to us about being blessed. And I use the word blessed because I readily admit saying the word rich makes us all feel uncomfortable. It's true. We dared to question whether we had truly believed what Torah says to us about being blessed. Sounds better than what Torah says to us about being rich. We think that that is somehow a unholy pursuit. But is it possible that our schools, our relatives, our friends, and our environment all trained us to believe that we're supposed to go to school, get a job, and hope to, by the end of our life, that we have enough money to retire? Do we need to retrain our brain? And the answer is yes, we do. Yes, we've been conditioned to never believe we could possibly be rich. You know, when you ask most Americans, they've done studies on this, if you ask most Americans if they believe they'll ever be rich, their top two possibilities for becoming rich are, do you know what they believe can happen that'll make them rich? Win the lottery is number one. You know what number two is? Be in an accident and call Alexander Shannara. Or some lawyer. Being in an accident in an automobile where a big truck hits you or get hurt at work. That's the top two beliefs of possibilities that living in America, the land of opportunity, believing they could possibly become wealthy. I would add a third to it for those who are more religious. I think a third way people have begun to believe that they can become wealthy is if they give the right amount of money to the right TV evangelist at the right anointed time on the right anointed offering. They play offerings to TV evangelists like playing the lottery. Maybe this one is the one that will unleash my wealth. I'm telling you the truth. You know, last week we talked about Elijah, and that widow of Zarephath, and how she did go and make the morsel of bread and gave it to Elijah, the prophet, first. And so that story has been abused by TV evangelists and by poor people who think, well, if I just take this sacrificial gift and I give it to the prophet, it'll open the windows of heaven for me. Not unless Yahweh said to. Yahweh said to the prophet, I have commanded a widow woman there. If he didn't tell you to give it, it's not going to open the windows of heaven because you gave it. But there are people out there that manipulate you out of it and have you believe that it will. This is an anointed offering. If you'll give right now, give this amount right now, it's going to open up the windows of heaven. So you got people that believe in the lottery, people that believe in accidents, and you got people who believe that they can give some special offering and become rich by doing so. For the most part, all of this shows that we've been conditioned to believe that we're never to be rich. So how do we retrain our brain? And Brian and I, Wednesday night, standing in my kitchen, agreed that it's not enough to talk about it or to hope for it. We need some practical things to do. So that's the reason I gave you a notebook. I'm going to give you some practical things that we're going to start doing. And I'm not going to finish this morning. There's going to be a part 2. There may be a part 3 and a part 4 and a part 5. I don't know. I'm going to keep going till Yahweh tells me to stop. But I'm going to talk about some practical things we need to do. If our life from this day forward changes for good, we're going to have to start here. Number 1, guard your heart with all diligence. Proverbs 4:23 says this, keep your heart with all diligence, for out of it are the issues of life. So the condition of our life is being governed by what's in our heart. So the Bible says, guard your heart with all diligence, because it's going to affect the way you live and how well you can live. Now when you hear that, what do you think of? When it says, keep your heart with all diligence, what do you think of? Stop listening to negative thoughts and ideas? Certainly, but let me ask you to think about it in a different way. If you were to go home this afternoon, and when you arrived, you realized there were 8 people in your home that were not supposed to be there, doing destructive, harmful things in your home, I don't think your plan of action would be to set up outside your house and guard it, making sure no more bad people got in to do destructive things. Right?
True.
What would be your first plan of action? Get those 8 people out. And if you needed assistance, you'd call for assistance, but you wouldn't be content to just set up outside and make sure nobody else gets in. You'd do whatever you had to do to get those 8 people out, to take those intruders captive and get them gone forever. Likewise, it's not enough for us to decide today to stop listening to negative thoughts and negative people and negative news. The first thing we have to do is examine our hearts and see what thoughts have been there our whole life that are causing us to be who we are and causing us to be where we are. There are things that need to be dug up and things that need to be kicked out. It may be something your dad said to you in anger when you was 8. It may be something your mother said to you. It might be something a grandparent said. It might be something that a teacher said. It might be something that a coach dared to yell at you. It might be something that a boy said to you when you were in school, or that a girl said to you when you were in school, that created in you an inferiority complex. Maybe something that an employer said. The first thing we've got to do is make some quiet time where we get along and we start looking to see what thoughts are governing who we are and how we behave and what we do. And if there are things in here that are destroying us, we got to evict those thoughts. Amen. If there are thoughts inside the house doing damage, be honest, get still, get quiet, and then get them out. Evict them. And then once you've done that, then guard your heart. And Brian and I talking about this Wednesday night, and I began to think about how there was when I was in the 10th grade, there was a senior on our football team whose mission in life was to humiliate and destroy me. And he taught me how to apologize for things that were not my fault. And by recalling that memory, I can see where that trait's still in me. I still will apologize for things that are not my fault. So that conditioning has to be removed. See what I'm saying? That's got to go. I cannot allow that to stay in my life. Right? I don't know what yours are. I don't know what's in you, but we all are going to have to get still, get quiet, and be honest and find out if there are things that we've allowed to shape who we are. And if they're not good traits, we need to get them out. In the same time that I am finding these bad thoughts and bad things that happen that have shaped me, I also recall, though, a good thing that I did. And I think I've shared it with you before. But I rehearsed it to Brian, because while we were talking, that thing rose up inside of me. And I said, oh, that was good. Why don't I do that more? When I was working as a salesman for 84 Lumber Company, I needed a new truck. And by a new truck, I mean a used one, because I didn't dare believe I could afford a new one. But I needed one newer than what I had. And so I began to look for a truck, and I looked for 6 months at least, 6, 7 months, because trucks were expensive and they wouldn't negotiate on them. They were a hot item, and they were just hard to find. So for 6 months, I looked for a truck. I finally found one, and I bought it, and I was thrilled to get it. At the same time, Brian and Amanda are playing sports, baseball and softball and basketball and football and all that kind of stuff. But I also had a desire, a great desire, to put a batting cage. And I was coaching. I wanted a batting cage at my house with a jugs pitching machine. Well, you got to build the frame. You've got to hang the net. The net challenged my ability to believe that I could ever have it. I mean, the nets were expensive, and then a jugs pitching machine, I think those things were $1,800, $1,900 at the time, the one I wanted. So I wanted one of those too, but I needed a truck, so I bought the truck. Well, you know how it is sometimes. You buy something, and I bought my truck, and then there was another salesman there at 84 who saw my truck, and he wanted a truck. So I come in one day, not long after I had bought mine, and he said, buying me a new truck today. I said, you are? Yes. I said, what are you getting? He told me. I said, that's great. And then I said, what are you going to do with your old truck? Trading it in. I said, how much are they going to give you for it? He said, $3,000. Because I'd spent 6 months looking for a truck, I knew something that I wouldn't normally know. Because vehicles are not my strong suit. Automobiles are not my strong suit. So when he said $3,000, I said, Keith, don't trade that truck in to them for $3,000. That truck's worth a whole lot more than $3,000. Sell that truck, then go buy your truck. Trading it in. I said, then sell it to me. He said, I'll sell it to you. I said, how much? He said, $3,000. Now you got to understand, I didn't have $3,000. I had no concept of where I was going to get $3,000. I didn't have a bank that would loan me $3,000. But at the time, all I could think about was, this could buy my jugs pitching machine and the batting net. The thoughts that had governed my life, my whole life, which were, boy, that's a great deal, but I can't afford it. God, I wish I could afford it. Man, that's a good deal. Those thoughts did not govern me in that situation. Instead, I heard myself say, great, I'll take it. I'll come in here in the morning and I'll give you $3,000 and I'll buy you a truck. I said it not knowing where in the world I was going to get $3,000. And he said, nope, trading it in at 4 o'clock. Not going to wait till tomorrow morning. He got his heart set on a new one. That thing's leaving today. Well, that challenged my thinking now even more. But I went in there and told the manager, I'm going to take a few hours off. I'll be back as soon as I can. Where are you going? I'm going to go get money to buy that truck. What do you need with that truck for? You already got a truck. I'm just going to buy it. I went and found the money, came back, called Keith into the same room we'd been sitting in. I sat him down, and this shows the purity of my intent. I was not looking to take advantage of that man. I sat him down and I said to him, Keith, I've known you a long time. You're a good friend. I want you to know that truck is worth more than $3,000, and I wish you would sell it to somebody else. He said, if you don't want it, I'm trading it in at 4 o'clock. I slapped the money on the table. I said, sign the title, hardhead. He signed the title, handed me the title, He took the money. I now owned another truck. I lived 45 miles away, so the next morning Marie drove in with me. Hey, by the way, Marie, we bought another truck. She rode in with me, and she drove my truck back home. 3 days later, may have been 3 or 4 days later, I sold that truck for $6,000. That bought a Joke's pitching machine, a net, 6x6 post, and allowed me to pour concrete. I poured it myself, but allowed me to pour concrete to build a batting cage. It served us for years. Here's the point. Old way of thinking didn't govern me in that instant. Why don't I do more thinking like that? Why do I allow, when a business deal or another opportunity comes up, why do I allow myself to say, "Oh, that's a great deal, but I can't afford it"? Why am I not willing? What has conditioned me to the place that I don't start thinking, this is an opportunity and Yahweh will make a way for me? And listen to see if He will. So there are some thoughts in the house that need to be gotten out. There are some thoughts we need to say, oh, Yahweh, let me see how it works here. I need to try it here, and I need to try it here, and try it over and over and over again. Once we get the bad thoughts out, then we guard our heart. And that means you got to be careful what you listen to, what you read, what you think on. The things we listen to, read, and think on create a reality on the inside of us. Abram was very rich. You want me to tell you something that Abraham never did? Abraham never started his day by listening to Fox News to see what they had to say about Nimrod. Abraham never started his day by listening to CNN squawking about how the Tower of Babel was the most awesome thing that was ever done. He didn't get on his phone and read Nimrod's tweets for the day. If we're going to hear from Yahweh, we're going to have to turn the news off. Amen. That sounds ludicrous. How am I going to know what's going on? Here's the truth. If you turn the news off and say, I'm not letting that stuff in my heart anymore, you're going to have to fight to keep it out, because everybody else you know is listening to it, and it's governing how they think, and it's governing what they talk about. You're going to have to fight not to let it in your heart. You don't have to watch it to hear it. The whole world is feeding at that negative, untrustworthy trough. If Abram didn't need the Babylonian times to be prepared, neither do I. What I need is a heart that's guarded from all that poison that's being spewed out, so that I can accurately hear the voice of Yahweh. If I listen to the news, it's based in fear, and the fear is going to move me to act in a certain way, and it's going to keep me broke all of my life. Yep. But if I turn the fear off, now I can hear Yahweh, and times may get bad, but Yahweh will have me prepared for it better than I could ever prepare myself by listening to that garbage. So dig out things that are in your heart that are doing damage, and turn off things that seem like they might be helping. But the truth is, there is no way that any news channel is going to help you, because the product they sell is fear, and fear never brings a blessing. All right, guard your heart. Number 2, open your mouth. Till you get your heart guarded, it's not a good idea to open your mouth. But once you get your heart guarded, open your mouth. A good man out of the good treasure of his heart brings forth that which is good. An evil man out of the evil treasure of his heart brings forth that which is evil. For out of the abundance of the heart his mouth speaks. If we have done a good job of guarding our hearts, then we should have a treasure full of good things in our heart, and out of the treasure begin to speak. Here's what I mean. If we're guarding our hearts with all diligence, then we start thinking in our hearts that despite how wicked Laban is, Yahweh's not going to let him hurt me. We're not going to spend our day thinking, well, I wonder what Laban's going to con me out of today. We're not going to spend our day thinking, well, I wonder how I'm going to get messed up by him today. Instead, we're going to start our day by thinking, boy, I wonder how Yahweh's going to deliver me from him today. Yahweh's not going to let him hurt me. Yahweh is going to find a way to get me blessed. Even though Laban and all of his sons don't want me blessed, Yahweh's going to find a way to get blessings to me. And so we can start declaring in our hearts, or out of our hearts, start declaring out of our hearts and out of our mouths, Yahweh's going to bless me. Yahweh's going to bless me. So here's some practical advice. Do this on purpose. Find something you can believe and write it down and start saying it to yourself. Find something you can believe, write it down, and start saying it to yourself out loud. Not to somebody else. If you have faith that you have it within yourself. You don't need to go around declaring it to other people, but start saying it to yourself. I got this, the first part of this phrase from somebody else, but that's all right. He probably got it from somebody else too. But, you know, you might say this. I'm happy and grateful today that I'm blessed in my body. Got good health. I'm happy and I'm grateful today that I'm blessed in my body. Or you might start the day and say, I am happy and I'm grateful today that I'm the head and not the tail. Or you could say, I'm happy and I'm grateful that I can hear and hearken to the voice of Yahweh. Find something you can believe and connect what you believe with your mouth and watch it change the world you live in. I am happy and I'm grateful now that the windows of heaven are open unto me and Yahweh's emptying out a blessing upon me. Can you believe that? That's a promise that Yahweh made the tithers. So you could come based on that and say, Yahweh, I am happy and I'm grateful now that you've opened the windows of heaven to me and you're emptying out on me blessings that I can't even contain. Yahweh, I am grateful and I am happy now that I have multiple sources of income. Write something down and say it every day. Out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. And it either is saying, woe is me, it'll never change, or it's saying, I am happy and I'm grateful, because it's going to change. Fill your heart with good treasure that your mouth can vocalize. Guard your heart, open your mouth, and I'll close with this. I know we've gone a long time this morning. I'll close this morning with this. Connect with Yahweh. Well, should I have put that first? Connect with Yahweh. Well, why wouldn't I put that first? Because the truth is we can't hear what He has to say if we don't get the garbage out of our hearts first. If the garbage in our hearts is all the news that we're hearing and all the negative things our friends are saying and all the voices from our past in there, we'll never hear what Yahweh's saying. We got to clean house first if we're going to hear Him. We have to do some prep work in order to connect. But once we've done the prep work, we can connect. How? By training ourselves to listen. Learn His voice and the way He talks by reading His Word. However, you're not going to like this. Some are not going to like it, but it's the truth. However, you can read His Word for 50 years and still die broke. We're talking about taking it beyond just reading the Word and being able to hear His voice. Reading the Word trains us how He talks. And when we trained on how He talks, then we can hear His voice. Yahweh wants to give us ideas. Yahweh wants to tell us how to make the sheep bear speckled sheep. Yahweh wants to warn us. Yahweh wants to direct our steps. But we keep going through life aimlessly and mindlessly without listening. So we're going to have to start listening on purpose, even if it's just 10 minutes a day. Isn't our future worth 10 minutes a day? 10 minutes a day, we say, okay, this is going to be a time that I learn to shut everything else off and shut my mind down, and I'm just going to get still and quiet. And you invest 10 minutes in learning how to just get still and quiet, and today you don't hear anything. It's okay. And tomorrow you don't hear anything. That's okay. You're training yourself. And you might go days and days and days and days and not hear anything. But then there will be a day you're just riding down the road minding your own business, and you'll hear something. And it will unlock revelation knowledge to you. Have you ever been trying to find a place that you weren't sure where it was? And so you turned the radio down to help you find it? You ever done that? Radio's blaring and you're looking and you can't find it. And so you turn the radio down. Somehow now you're more capable of finding what you're looking for. It's the same way with being connected to Yahweh. That's a clue to us. When we're needing clarity and instruction and direction from Yahweh, we're going to have to turn everything else down. He's not going to scream at us. He's going to whisper it to us. So we're going to have to learn to be quiet. We're going to have to learn to love being quiet. We're going to have to learn how to disconnect from our own thoughts. We're going to have to learn how to be still. And when we learn how to do that, then we'll start hearing Yahweh, sometimes even while we sleep. But if we never practice listening, we'll never hear. So the way we connect with Yahweh, one of the ways we connect with Yahweh is through listening. Another way we connect with Him is through praying. And I tell you what, I'm just going to stop right there this morning. We'll pick up there next week. We've gone long enough today. We're going to talk about praying and how vital that is. We listen. So praying is a twofold thing. It's something we say to Yahweh, but prayer is supposed to be a two-way channel. We say things to Him and then we hear things from Him. So we'll talk more about prayer next week, and we'll pick up on some more practical things that we need to be doing. But let me close this morning by saying that there's going to be a lot more parts to this than I've scribbled down a bunch of things that on the way here just started scribbling down things that we also need to talk about. But let me conclude with this. July 31st, 2021, this is the day my life changed for good. Why don't you say that out loud? July 31st, 2021. This is the day my life changed for good. Now, why did it change for good? Because I realized that I was living my life at a standard that was below what was possible. I've been conditioned to live at a standard that's below what is possible. And I realized that that's not because Yahweh doesn't want me blessed. And I realized it's not because the world has the power to prevent me from being blessed. Greater is He that is in me than he that's in the world. But I'm living my life at a standard that is below what's possible because I've been conditioned to accept my condition. I've been conditioned to accept my condition. So today I'm going to make the necessary changes. I'm going to guard my heart with all diligence, and I'm going to open my mouth and speak the good treasures that are deposited within it, and I'm going to connect in a real way with Yahweh so that I can hear His voice. Now we're going to start today, and I gave you a notebook that I hope you will use and bring back with you next week. Anybody ever offered you something to eat and you said, no, thank you, I'm not hungry? Yeah. Until we get hungry, there will be no consumption. So today is just an activity that's designed to see if we can create a hunger for the possibility of more. I'll go ahead and tell you this. You're standing, so you know it won't take long. I don't talk long when you're standing. As Yahweh began to deal with me about these things a couple of days ago, here's what I heard. Yahweh cannot get to us what He wants to get to us until He gets to you what He wants to get to you. Let me say that again. Yahweh cannot get to us what He wants to get to us until He gets to you what He wants to get to you. Back when Pentecost, we took up on our offering. It was an amazing offering. And Yahweh said for us to use it for what? Say again? A building. And I've been conditioned to think, boy, that's going to require a lot of work, and we'll do the best we can, and we'll see how cheap we can get by, see how cheap we can get one. That's the way I've been conditioned to think. And boy, that's going to mean working at night a lot, and working on Sundays a lot, trying to get this thing together. And then, you know, as money comes in, we'll do the best we can. That's the way I've been conditioned to think. That's a bad way to think. If Yahweh wants us to build a building, He's never told anybody to do such a thing and barely get by. Just throw me up a shack and it'll be okay. No. We need a building. He wants us to have a building, but He cannot get to us what He wants to get to us until He gets to you what He wants to get to you. I'm telling you that I stand here today believing that Yahweh wants us to have an amazing building, and in order for us to have the amazing building, He's going to have to give you amazing increase. That should excite you more than it just did. Yahweh bless you and keep you. Yahweh make His face shine upon you and be gracious to you. Yahweh lift up His countenance upon you and give you peace as His name is put upon you. So shall He bless you.